Hi there, and welcome back to another edition of ScaleUp Radio, the podcast inspired by the Entrepreneurial ScaleUp System and designed to make navigating our scale-up journeys that little bit easier by learning from others' experiences. I'm Kevin Brent, and this week on the show, we welcome Michael Youmans. And Michael is the innovative founder of Fiodh Watches, that's spelled Fiodh. And they're a unique brand born from a blend of real craftsmanship and passion. And he started in 2017 after a challenging job search. Michael turned his fortunes around with a successful Kickstarter campaign, raising £16,000 initially to launch his bespoke watch company. And Fiodh Watches, known for its unique timepieces, and they're crafted from reclaimed whiskey barrel wood or whiskey casks. And he quickly found his niche through strategic collaborations with major whiskey distilleries, providing custom branded watches and clocks. And we delve into Michael's journey from the conception of Fiodh to growth, highlighting his hands-on approach to production, the artistic process behind each watch, and his ambitious plans for the future. So make sure you don't miss any future episodes of ScaleUp Radio. Wherever you like to listen to your podcast, you can subscribe to them. You can also nominate a guest for ScaleUp Radio if you know someone with an interesting story, and you can find out how in the show notes below. So for now, listen on and join us as Michael shares his insights on overcoming obstacles, the power of partnerships, and his vision for scaling Fiodh Watches while staying true to the art of watchmaking. Welcome to ScaleUp Radio. I'm delighted to be joined today by Michael Youmans, who is the founder and designer of Fiodh. So, Michael, welcome to ScaleUp Radio.
Thank you, Kevin. It's lovely to be here. Thank you for letting me on your show.
Tell us about Fiodh then. I mean, we're getting a clue that, and a little bit from your accent, that you might be from Scotland.
There's a story to that as well. I've got an interesting accent, to say the least. So Fiodh, it's a Gaelic word that means wood or timber. I make watches, or handcraft watches, from whiskey casks or whiskey barrels. I like to say whiskey casks because that basically is a range of different types of so barrels would come under that, and then you've got all the other types. Okay. So I hand make them in Glasgow in Scotland, and I've been doing that since 2017 is basically when I started, when I came up with the idea.
Great. And what sort of stage are you at? I mean, I've had a look at the website. You've got some pretty big whiskey brands on there. I think you've got a rum brand as well, haven't you? So some pretty big partnerships going on. So tell us about what sort of stage you're at with the business.
So at this moment in time, I'm doing a lot of collaborations with the kind of the big distilleries. And initially that was kind of the idea, because as a small business, you're unheard of. So jumping on board with some of the bigger guys, it adds a lot of credential to what you're doing. And so, I've worked with Glenfiddich, Aberfeldy, Lagavulin. J. Gow is the one that you mentioned, the rum. They're based in Orkney.
Okay, yeah.
And recently the Glasgow distillery, and there's a few others on the works at the moment as well. So it's exciting. It's just kind of, I guess initially, it was, the whole idea was I wanted to create a watch. So I studied product design at Strathclyde in Glasgow. Yeah. I did my undergrad, and then I did my master's there, and then I finished that in 2016. And I've always, just since a young age, I've always just loved designing and creating things, and it's just all I've wanted to do, really. It wasn't necessarily starting a business. It was more, I was always just fascinated with the idea of designing, and that you could have an idea in your head and you can make it come to life as well. So it's that kind of fascination.
And what led you to watches?
Watches was something my late father, he was always into. He was, I would say, a watch enthusiast. Okay. He was an engineer, so he worked at the ship Clyde here. We used to live in Newcastle, but we moved up to work here. He worked at BA Systems. And so I guess I've always had that kind of engineering side of like design and stuff like that. That kind of came from him. But yeah, essentially watches was something that he really enjoyed. And I was always fascinated by. growing up. I just loved the combination between the mechanical side of things and also that with the fashion side of things. So you could essentially tailor around the mechanism. And so, yeah, I just kind of thought to myself, oh, I wonder if I could make one. That kind of sparked. The idea was more the curiosity behind it, really. It seemed challenging and unique enough. And I thought, right, I want to make a watch. But I didn't want to make any watch because the watch market is saturated. There's new watches coming out all the time. People starting Kickstarters all the time. And so I kind of turned to what I love, which is the country I live in. So I love Scotland. I love the heritage. I love all the kind of stories behind it and sustainability as well. And in my head, I thought, I wonder if you could make a watch from the whiskey casks, because it's already got a story to it. It's already got heritage to it. Yeah. And if I could reuse that and bring it and turn that into a new life form, I thought that would be quite interesting. So I went on a mad journey, let's say, from that point on.
Okay, well, let's explore that in a minute. But to start with, let's with where you are now. Who's they're obviously a very handcrafted, very special product. So, what kind of people are buying them? Are they whiskey drinkers of those brands that want to have a watch that goes with it, or what?
I would say at the moment the market it's quite interesting because initially you think to yourself, all right, it's the whiskey drinkers, they're gonna love this because obviously it's still tied to the story and it's part of the essential part of making whiskey, right? So I thought, yeah, but actually a lot of tourists or like maybe partners would buy it for their husbands or because they're into whiskey. And they want something unique and different. And also maybe, again, telling a story of like their own interest, which, if they love Scotland and stuff like that, then it's a nice kind of gift for them. So a lot of it is kind of the kind of tourist market. A lot of the products I make are in a lot of distillery gift shops. So, which is great because, you get a lot of floods of tourists that go there. Yeah. And not always do they want to come back with a bottle. A lot of the times the bottles you can probably buy in the airports and go back, but something that's different that you can only buy there.
Okay.
So I think, those are the kind of...
And is that the main sort of outlets or routes to channels to market for you? Is it through the distillery gift shops or how?
So I've got it in a lot of different, like even gift shops around Scotland. There's the Scotch Whisky Experience, which is quite a big one. That's right next to Edinburgh Castle. So, that's right up, the Royal Mile. So that's a great location as well. I've got my own plinth with the watch there. And
great.
Yeah, it does really well there. Again, this is, catering to the tourists as well. They will go in and they see something a bit different and unique. So they'll pick that up. Those ones that are in there is got my branding on it. While you go to the distilleries, for example, and they'll have their branding on it. Okay. So it's more tailored to them, and it'll be slightly different in terms of their brand colors and the strap color or stuff like that. So, yeah.
And do you have to sell at a different price to those particular outlets? How
so
margins work? Yeah,
so in terms of margins, obviously it's going to be wholesale prices. When you're selling, but you're obviously after a kind of a bigger amount of order. That's kind of how it works, right? So, and again, it's essentially once they start picking up on that, you'll get continuous reorders from them, and that's kind of my business plan at the moment is getting into as many distilleries as possible.
Yeah.
And then branching out even into rum distilleries and, maybe even the wine distilleries. So that'd be interesting. So yeah, there's a big market for it. I think something different. And
you do sell direct to customers on the website, don't you?
Yeah, I sell direct to customers on the website. And also I do tailored straps as well. So I could do, for example, family tartan straps, because that also adds something extra special as well.
So you make all your own straps as well, I think?
I do. I make my own straps. So the straps, so I buy in the hide from the Scottish Leather Group. They're called Muirhead. And I work and make my own straps as well with that.
Yeah.
So pretty much I make most of it apart from right the back stainless steel case and some slight components. But yeah, I do the straps, I do the main body of the wood, and essentially everything else I kind of assemble and put together.
Yeah. So it must take you quite a while to put each watch together, I would imagine.
Yeah, I'd say it took a while to kind of streamline the process. So it doesn't make sense to just make one at a time. So what I would normally do is I have a structured kind of manufacturing process within my workshop.
Yeah.
So there's stations for different parts that I work on. And that way that I can do things, at batches, for example. And that obviously speeds up the process a lot more and makes it manageable.
Very good. And I think you've won a couple of awards, haven't you? As well as, for example, the Great British Entrepreneur Awards. I think I saw you shortlisted there as.
Yes, that's right. Yeah.
And you won your category, I think, didn't you?
Yeah. So I won the Make and Create category, and that was last November. So that was quite a big achievement. Still blown away by that, to be honest. Just the title itself.
Yeah.
It's quite a big one. So yeah, that was within the Scotland and Northern Ireland region. So I won in that category.
Very good.
But yeah, there's been loads of awards in the past that I've won as well. I think one of the other ones I would probably highlight would be the Scottish Edge, because that was for me quite an important time to win that as well. Because not only do you get support from them, but you get a cash reward.
Right.
So that really helped to kind of push the business on. Yeah, essentially, because I started with no money, So
tell us about when you started then.
Yeah, so going back to 2017 when I had ideas, I was a skint student.
Yeah.
Essentially, I was kind of in between. Well, finishing my master's and going, right, I'm going to get myself a great career and job. I'm going to become a designer. And I was so excited to just start making some money. And unfortunately, a lot of students like myself, they go into that loop of like, you don't have enough experience. So then you get turned down and then you just get stuck in a loop. And unfortunately, I got stuck in that loop. Right. And no one would take me on, even though, as much as you believe in yourself, getting that foot in that door it just felt impossible in a way. Yeah. So I thought if no one was going to give me that experience, then what I would essentially do was start this business to show them that I could do it. Mm-hmm. To give it to myself, because I didn't want to just go into any old job, as I said, since I was young, I just wanted to be a designer. I wanted to create things, and so this was my time to show that I could do it, and starting off with no money was difficult because so I was essentially I was on universal credit at that point, just using any little money. So I was staying at my parents, using any money to just buy certain parts for the watch, and then just work. I used to carry this shoebox with me, right, which had all my parts and bits of wood in it. To carry that everywhere and show people and take it to the university where I was allowed to use their workshop. Yeah. And then essentially at that point, I knew that I had to get money through. So I did a crowdfunding campaign. So I ran a Kickstarter campaign.
Okay. And how did that go?
So that went really well. I mean, so if you're not familiar with Kickstarter, you need to set yourself a target. Yeah. And you need to hit every penny of the target by the end of the duration that you set.
Yeah. Otherwise you don't get any, do you?
Then you don't get anything, right? Yep. And essentially I was quite naive as well, because you don't know what you're doing. It's essentially you're thinking, right, I just need money to keep going here. So I set myself a goal of 15 grand. And I think I set that goal just because it was a number that popped into my head, thinking, okay, if I hit this number, then it shows that people do actually want this product. And I knew that once, like to actually run the Kickstarter, I needed to gather momentum before the actual point, because that's really important. If you don't do that, then you'll just press start, and no one's going to see it. No one's going to hear about it. It's not going to do well. So I had to gather a lot of momentum. I would go out into the streets of Glasgow and I'll be talking to people about it, letting them know that, you know, I've got this Kickstarter coming up. I'll show them a watch and I'll say, like, okay, what do you think about it? And then I'll be doing loads of other things, from getting influencers, Scottish influencers, to just help support and talk about it. Mm-hmm. As much as I could, just to get to that point before starting the Kickstarter. So and then the first bit, it's always interesting. So you see it and it just starts going up, and you know, you just see the numbers start racking up, and you're like, oh my God, it's doing really well. You get really excited, and then suddenly it like just goes down, and then you're like, oh, okay. So it's kind of like a roller coaster in a way when you see the graph, and you see the middle point, because that's at a 30-day duration.
How many days?
30 days.
30 days, yeah. So yeah.
And then towards the end, people start dropping off, because I guess, people think, oh, I don't want it anymore. But then you start to kind of try to push on. So I hit 16,000 in the end. Right. So I was quite pleased with that. That definitely helped. And
they're buying into a watch, are they? But they're committing a certain amount of money for a watch as part of that Kickstarter. So that's right. So you had a number of watches now that you've committed to make. Exactly.
That's the next part, right? You do this crowdfunding, and then next it's like I think I got to like 100 watch sales from it.
Yeah.
And it was 3 months before Christmas, and I didn't actually take that into account, that actually a lot of people probably bought it for Christmas presents. So here I am thinking, right, oh, fantastic, I've got this money, and I need to now make it for Christmas, because I got loads of emails saying, right, can I, I bought this for my husband, blah, blah, blah. And so for the next few months, there I am in my workshop, sleeping on the floor, making watches every single day. And it was like also sending it all around the world as well, because you've got people that bought it from America, Australia, Switzerland, Sweden, all these places. So you've got to take into account, the logistics of everything as well. And it comes close to Christmas. You've got to figure out what's the last deadline of shipping things.
Yeah.
And so it was some time back then. So
what were your key lessons from doing the Kickstarter campaign?
Just be more clear with the timescale. If I was to do it again, then I think I would promote it a lot wiser and a lot. Again, it's more difficult when you don't have the funds to market, because that's the thing. A lot of businesses, they actually do Kickstarters as just a safer way to launch a product, but they've got the money also to kind of push advertisements and send, and so people can start seeing that. I didn't have any of that, so I had to do things as organically as I could. So word of mouth, again, getting influencers on board who didn't want really anything but just to help support. Going out into the streets, just talking to people. So in a way, it's quite hard to say, because I guess I did what I could with my means.
Yeah.
But yeah. I guess timescale is probably one that I would definitely do a lot better, and just try to figure that out, because, at the end of the day, you don't want to rush anything. You don't want to rush making the watches as well, because, you rush something, then once it's all done, you're going to have issues with people writing back saying, oh, there's not, the quality is not what I expected and stuff like that. But again, it was very early days, and I could only do with the machines that I had as well. So right now, things have obviously developed and grew a lot better, because I've got better machinery to make the watches.
Yeah.
Well, back then I was doing things as basic as I could.
Yeah. So you have a successful Kickstarter campaign. You've got 100 or so watches that you've got to make in a relatively short period of time.
Yeah.
And from what you said, your sole focus was then on making and getting those watches out to the customer. What happened next? Because I imagine in that time you probably weren't talking to many new customers about it, because you got to get the watches done. So what happened once you got those 100 watches out?
Yeah. So after that point, it was again a bit of a plateau. It kind of went down, because it's like, now you've sold your watches, great. But I used a lot of money to improve my machinery, so I had to kind of try to redevelop and make the product better, which I felt was the kind of the logical next step, really.
Yeah.
But again, the money, 16 grand goes very quickly.
Yeah, indeed. Yeah.
That's not a lot, especially when you're using it to buy parts, and then Kickstarter takes a cut as well.
Yeah.
And then you've got your workshop you pay for. There's a lot of things within that, and then so it goes very quickly. And then after that, that's why the Scottish Edge Award, that was quite a big part in the next stage, I would say. I've always heard about Scottish Edge, and I've always wanted to apply for it, and I didn't want to apply early because I knew I had to, again, add credential to why I should win. Mm-hmm. So running the Kickstarter obviously was quite a big thing for why, I felt it was the right time to apply. And then from that point, I think it was 2019. So sales were very kind of here and there, very slow. But yeah, then it hit, because again, the machinery that I could produce, that I could buy, was not enough to make the quality of the watches as well as I would like it to be. So that's why the Scottish Edge, I think it was 10K that I won from that. Mm-hmm. That again allowed me to buy machinery that costs like $4,000, for example.
And what sort of machinery are we talking about here? Is this for turning the watch faces, turning the wood?
So I purchased a CNC machine. Okay. So a desktop CNC machine, and one that it could do very precise, accurate carvings. And the one I was looking at, you could flip jig it, so you could do the inside and outside. So then I could actually create the exact pattern and replicate that every single time. So, I already had the design. Now I had to just use it on the software to then create that. And then also I got a laser cutter as well. So the straps currently, you put the hide in there and then it laser cuts the strap. And then basically that way, it speeds up the process as well. Mm. And that's another $4,000. So I spent $4,000 on the CNC, $4,000 on the laser cutter. Yeah. And that just speeds up the process and makes things even better. So yeah.
Yeah, and how many? So what sort of forecasts have you had to put together to get your payback period that you want?
Yeah. So in terms of the forecast, it was after that COVID hit as well. It was straight after. Yeah. So it was kind of again, I think with everybody, it was kind of the unknown what's happening. And it felt for me at that point, I was starting from the very beginning again, because I had to relearn how to use these machines and make the products, and then change the website so it's a lot better, create the better watch version. And at that point, it's again going back, okay, now I need to market, right? I need people to get it seen. But thankfully, during that point, I sent a watch to a whiskey influencer. Yeah. And he kindly showed it to his audience, and someone from Glen Scotia, who worked at Glen Scotia, caught onto that and contacted myself and said, so that was my first actual collaboration with a distillery.
Great.
So then they got to, they asked for, because I also make clocks as well as watches.
Okay.
Yep. So the clocks are made from the top and the bottom of the casks, so the lids. And they're round, so it makes sense to make clocks out of them. So they actually ordered 100 clocks, and for me that was a big deal. That was during COVID, and I didn't know what was happening. Yeah. So from that point on, I was like, right now I've got 100 clocks to make, and what they wanted is their logo on it, and they wanted it distributed to 18 countries in Europe.
Okay.
So there was Brexit hit. So then that's when I remember thinking, right, logistically, now I need to figure that out. Yeah. So after I made all the clocks, now I have to ship all the clocks. But again, that was great, because that again just kept things ticking and running. And
So what surprised you about then having to ship to different countries? What did you have to learn? What surprised you?
Every country has their own system. It's not one box ticks everything. You know, it's like every country has their own way of dealing with customs. And so you got to research beforehand, because the last thing you want is for it to get stuck and then it'll get sent back to you, you know, and it's expensive sending all these things. So it's, you know, and at that point, you know, you could easily waste a lot of money. So it's making sure exactly you do your due diligence. And for example, I was sending, was it 20 clocks to Israel? And I know that's, you know, Europe, but it was sending it to Israel at that point, and they've got their own system, and that was difficult, because they need like actual signatures from yourself and from the company, and actual like stamping as well, so a logo stamp, which I didn't actually know about until it was there, and now they're asking for loads of information, so it got held there for a while.
Right.
So it's just one of those things. Again, it's a learning curve. But yeah, I mean, I got them anyway, all sent out.
And I imagine that, given that the distillery sort of put that ownership on you to have to ship to these countries. So I imagine when you originally agreed to it and the deal, you didn't have all the information at hand, did you, about how much it was going to cost to post to all these?
No, I didn't. No, I was. I just got sent a list of addresses in different countries. So and how many clocks they wanted. Yeah. Basically, that was the information. So.
Great. So that was the start of the collaboration journey with the distilleries then. Yeah. And from sounds like one of those fortuitous calls by that influencer. Which kind of helped you to, but I'm guessing now really, but to reposition your approach a little bit. Yeah.
Yeah. Oh no, 100%. Because that went so well. And I knew, again, at that point, I've always wanted to collaborate with the bigger companies. And I thought at that point, right now, I just need to start reaching out, you know, personally going. So I actually went to Isla and Jura, and I went to the distilleries, and I had a watch in my hand. And I would I would call up first and be like, can I talk to the manager? You know, and then I'll make an appointment. I'll go over and I'll speak to them. And I'll show them, and you know, everyone sounded enthusiastic, let's say, you know, but that's one thing. But then the next thing is actually getting anything done, you know, hearing anything back after that. But there was one manager from Jura Distillery, and he was amazing. He loved it. He was just like, yeah, let's do something. And then we kept in contact, and I made bespoke watches for them to have in their gift shop. So that was the first watches that I made for a distillery. And then from then on, really, it's just been kind of gathering momentum more. So I also I started doing the trade fairs as well. So the Scottish Trade Fair, which is where obviously a lot of the stockists go to. A lot of distilleries go to that as well.
Okay, yes.
Which made sense, and so they'll stop over, and that's where I met Glenfiddich as well, and Aberfeldy Distillery as well. So those were good. And then 2 years ago I worked with Glenfiddich. Last year I worked with Aberfeldy, and it's just been kind of keeping on top with, like, because the thing within the industry as well, a lot of the key people you talk to, they'll switch jobs, and that's the difficult part. Okay. Is now you've kind of lost the contact in a way. So you got to keep on top of that and make sure that you can still find someone else there. Yeah. You know,
and on the flip side, they've gone to another distillery, and you've got a friendly face in a new distillery as well, hopefully.
Exactly. Yeah. Because a lot of them are owned by bigger brands. See, yes. So that's the thing. It's once you get into one, potentially you could get into a lot of other ones as well. You know, if you get the right contacts, the right people. For example, Diageo. So I worked with Lagavulin last year. Yeah. And, they're owned by Diageo. And, they own quite a few different distilleries as well. So.
Yeah, well, they're one of the biggest drinks brands in the world, aren't they?
Yeah. So, so it's just been kind of just constantly on top. And as I say, right now I'm in talks with a few others. So it's all behind the scenes stuff and exciting projects as well, because they all want something bespoke and different, also tailored to their brand image.
And tell us about how things have evolved for you in the way that you feel about what you do, because a lot of times with a craft product, there's a lot of love and enjoyment starts off, and it's something that you're really passionate about, the product, whatever you're designing and producing, and it's at the hobby sort of level, and then things change as it becomes more of a business. So how's your love for what you do?
That's a great question. I think a lot of people will resonate with that. Essentially, as I say, I started because of my kind of stubbornness of not wanting to take any job, and I guess the curiosity whether I could do it or not, and to gain experience within the industry and show I can design things. So it kind of led from there onto things starting to take off. And now I have showcased I could sell a product and work with suppliers and all these other things within the business. And as I said, I've always, like, my key thing is I would probably put myself as a designer first than a businessman, which is sometimes very difficult, because obviously if you want to continue doing what you love doing, you got to consider the business aspect of it, right? Yeah. Without that, then you can't. So I had to learn a lot of things about business, obviously, as the journey progressed, because all I wanted to do was create new products.
Yeah.
All I wanted to do was get my sketchbook out and start drawing and, thinking of, oh yeah, that'd be cool to do that. Well, maybe I could change this and change that. But no, you can't do that. You got to stick to something and develop it until, you can get to the point where you can launch the product and sell and make money, and then you can reinvest,
Yeah. And what is what's your ambition for the business? How do you want to take it? How far do you want to take the business?
I think it's with the nature of my business, as I say, it's got its challenges, because it's not like I have a manufacturer, so in a way there is a bottleneck, and so the speed of what I can make is not at the speed of any other bigger manufacturers that could just start rattling them out, and so in terms of what I would like to see is, essentially, I would obviously like to keep growing in collaborations with different distilleries, keep building the brand name, and launch new products as well. Still within the watch industry, for mechanical watches, for example, female watches, pocket watches, even. There's a lot of different options I think would be quite interesting. But yeah, essentially it's keeping on top with the demand, how much I can make. And once it gets to a certain point, I'll need to take someone on board.
Right.
To teach them how to make what I make, and that way I can step back from the making side. So then I can now focus more on the direction of the business and the design aspect of the business as well. But it takes a while to do that, because obviously paying people is one of the biggest expenses of any business.
Yeah.
So you got to consider when it's the right time to do that, and it's right now still at the point where I'm ticking over and gathering more momentum, getting more distilleries on board and getting more, frequent sales coming through, till I can get to that point where I go, right, I'm going to take someone on. And then maybe at the start, maybe just part-time, but then gradual progress, really.
Yes, and you're going to have to find somebody that's got the sort of similar passion to you and the eye for detail, because you're not just talking about sticking it on the CNC machine and pressing a button and out it pops, are you?
No. There's a lot of other hands-on things that you need to do. So you're right. Yeah, it will take some time, but I feel like I've streamlined the process to a point where it's easier to, at least different stations, it's easier to teach. Obviously, it can always be streamlined even more, but thinking of even further design approaches to like how you can design it in a way that makes the watch even quicker without losing its quality. So there is other things. It's then coming down to price points as well, because obviously the last few years, it's one of the things. I think the biggest challenges of any business is the cost of living, where everything is constantly on the rise, and you're saying to yourself, right, how do you justify what you're making and selling for? So
that was going to be my next question, was how you went about determining the price, and I imagine from that first Kickstarter, 100 watches or so, the price has evolved, no doubt, from there. So how have you arrived at your current price point for what is essentially a very premium product?
So essentially, I've always it's quite interesting, because you obviously at the start you've got to think about your market. And that's kind of how you price your products, really. Your market, who you're intending to sell to, and then also looking into the watch market itself. Trying to compare as best as you can with something similar, but that's always difficult because my product's very niche. So there really isn't anything that you could potentially go, okay, that's similar, apart from potentially the types of components or the movement, which I've chosen because I wanted to still keep it in a way as affordable. And then later on bring out other watches that might be higher in price points, right. And then just justify that for why I've decided to price it at that. So it was essentially, the Kickstarter, I priced at a certain point, which I felt, okay, that sounds nice. It's probably affordable to most. And then things changed from there, especially when I decided to go to wholesale, because that's when you got to rattle your numbers. Because I think a lot of people don't understand that you're not just like when you start wholesaling, then your prices are going to have to go up because you can't justify it, So then the prices of the watches went up as well, and now the last few years as well, I'm having to put up the price a little bit more as well, just to kind of keep things ticking.
But equally at the end of the day. You're never going to be the kind of business that you're churning out thousands. So you can't sell on the basis that, okay, we'll just improve our efficiencies and make the margin and be comparable price. You're selling on the offer, on the premium nature of what you're doing, the exclusive nature of what you're doing, and that has a value, and you're aligning yourself as well with premium drinks. You're not aligning yourself with a lemonade or something, or even a beer. You're aligning yourself with a premium whiskey, the top of the top, if you like, premium drinks products.
No, I totally agree. I think it's interesting. Pricing is always an interesting one, especially within the watch market, because it's to the owner of how they see the product is how they will value. I see my products as an art piece.
Indeed, yeah.
So if it's an art piece, what do you price a piece of art? Right? Yeah. And, it could be anything, but to the eye of the beholder, it would be worth so much more, right? Yeah. So it's kind of that whole thing. And I know my products in the gift shops and distilleries, they're probably the most expensive, apart from probably, you got the 50-year-old or the bottles that are a lot more. But in terms of gifting, my products are the most expensive,
and what you've got is not only have you got all of your design and the piece of art that you've created in the in the standard format, but every watch is different, isn't it? Because the wood is different. The cask, which part of the cask it's come from, every watch is unique, isn't it?
No, 100%. That's always, I still find it fascinating. I could talk about grain structures all day, but I find it fascinating that when I take a stave. So I don't know if I could quickly go over the process if you like, because it's actually a fascinating process. And not a lot of people understand and know about the process enough, I think, to justify how it's made. So I usually get a stave. So a stave is a piece of the wood from the cask. that you can split apart, when you take out the silver, the metal rim. And I chop that into 3 pieces. I then put it through a wood planer so I can get it nice and flat, because all these bits of wood is at the moment curved and it's not easy to work with. So I plane it so it's nice and thin, and then I put it through a bandsaw to cut it into certain slices of sheets. At that point, I need to dry the wood, because the wood's been soaked in whiskey for a long time, or left in a warehouse for a long time. Wood and water is not a great combination, or any sort of liquid. So then I dry it, and I measure the weight of each wood. And once I keep it into an oven to dry, and the weight stops, it means that there's no more moisture content in the wood.
Yeah.
And at that point, I also do an interesting process, basically putting it through a vacuum chamber, where I put cactus resin inside with the wood. Okay. Now, cactus resin will soak into the wood, and the vacuum chamber basically takes the air out of the wood and replaces it with the cactus resin. The reason why I do that is to stabilize the wood.
Yeah.
And I take that wood out overnight. I put it back in the oven, and it's heat treated, so then it becomes solid piece of wood.
Yeah.
So that's one thing I had to learn, because obviously there's not many wooden watches out there, and there's a reason for
that. Yeah.
Because wood is not the best material when it comes to like the different elements. So I basically stabilize the wood, and then from that point on, I can then put it in the CNC, and I can carve it, and I basically carve both sides. I cut the piece out, I sand it, I hand sand it, I Danish oil it to put a coating on it, and that brings out the grains of the wood. Yeah. And at that point, you really see the difference in each piece and how unique it is, because some are darker, some are lighter, some have bigger lines of the grains, some don't, And then I start working on the straps, where I basically make the straps as well, laser cut them, I glue them together, I burnish the sides, and then I hand stitch it as well. And so there's all that, and I assemble it all together.
Yeah, fascinating, and a lot of work. And the question just popped in my head there is just around the wood. Is it oak? We hear of oak barrels. Is that the wood?
So majority of it is oak. Yeah. So oak is probably the one that I work with the most. I'm trying to think. I think I had cherry for the rum cask.
Okay.
So that was a bit different.
Much redder finish.
Yeah. So it was a bit different for that. So that was quite nice, working with different type of wood as well, because again, it just looks a lot more unique. And with the rum distillery, basically that was their first casks they had. So they asked me to make a batch of them with their first cask. So a lot of people who bought their first bottles from the cask bought a watch.
Right, and again, extenuating or adding to the real premium, exclusive nature of what you're doing. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Love it. It's fascinating. So, what do you love most then about what you're doing?
There's ups and downsides. I think of anyone run a business, I think if I know you asked me what I love, and I'm close to saying what I don't like.
Yeah, well, that might be my next question, so we might as well start there. Yeah.
Well, I think with a lot of people, it's the stability side of things, right? It's the kind of the nature of a business is how unstable it can be sometimes. Like, you don't know what's coming.
Yeah.
And the economy, you just don't know what's coming around the corner. Anything can happen, and I think when you have to always be on your toes, and you have to be ready for that. And I think, I've been through a lot the last 6 years or so, 6-7 years, building this. And sometimes you do feel a bit of a toll. You're like, oh, what's next? But apart from that side, just creating something that you love doing and seeing the faces of other people that enjoy your work. People that sends images of they've bought it for their 60, like someone's 60th, their dad's 60th, or someone's 80th, and then they send a picture of them just looking at it, and how much they'll just love the product, That feels, that you can't explain how that feels. of something that you've created out of nothing.
Fantastic.
But at the same point, it's just like, you gotta always, customer service is always so important in any business, right? So, just making sure you communicate properly, and you will at off chance have watches that might, for some reason, stop working. And you're like, okay, that's fine, right? You got to deal with that. You got to make sure that, that they contact you and you reply straight away and you deal with that, and I think that's essential.
Yeah.
Well, that's, and that could hurt as well, as much as, when you get a response saying, oh yeah, something stopped, and you're like, okay, right, let's just take a breath and let's do it. Yeah.
Good. So what's the end game? What's the legacy you want to leave? Are you gonna carry on making watches into your retirement, or what's the idea?
End game is an interesting question as well, I'd say, because as much as obviously I love to continue doing this forever, I also know that there's a lot more out there that I like to do as well. I say I want to continue being a designer, so I want to create lots of things. For me, like whatever happens with this business, I'll never regret anything, because I've learned so much within this time frame that I don't think I would ever learn doing anything else. All the things that I've learned about myself, my personality, how I managed to cope through the ups and downs. So whatever I decide to do next, if it is to start a new business or a new product, I've learned a lot that I can carry on from what I've done.
Yeah.
But in terms of what I would like to do, what's the end game? It's quite hard to say at this point, because I'm also, as I said, I'm quite stubborn. I don't like giving up. So I'll keep going until I can't. Yeah. until somehow there's no way, or money drains out and I'm like, okay, that's it. I've done what I can, but until I've kind of tried every single thing I can to make it work, then I'm going to keep going, and keep working with like these amazing distilleries and stuff like that is the plan. Hopefully start selling more overseas. America's a big market, so I want to start trying my best to get into that.
Yeah, and finding a way, I guess, that something that's going to be key to your future success is finding a way to produce at volume, at scale, that keeps all of the handmade aspects to it, the artisan and the exclusivity to it, but allows you to produce more. Exactly.
And if that means putting up the price, because it has to justify all my actions need to be justified, and if it's justified to keep this going or grow it even quicker, so then I could get it out to more people's hands, people's wrists even. And then that's what I'll need to do. But at the moment, my price is the way it is, and we'll see how it goes.
Very good. Excellent. Well, it's been fascinating talking to you, Michael, and really, really enjoyed the insights into your world and the making of watches from whiskey and rum casks. It's been absolutely fascinating. Are you all right for a couple of quick fire questions before we close?
Yeah, 100%.
So if you could go back to your younger self, maybe when you started, so with the benefit of a bit of hindsight now, what if anything would you do differently, or what would you say to your younger self?
It's always that's quite a hard question, because I've got this optimistic mindset in my head where it's like I had to go through what I had to go through to get to where I am, and I think everyone's journey is so unique, and it's always altered by the person's personality, that some people can go through what I've went through and some people can't, and not to sound like, oh yeah, like no one could do what I did and stuff like that, but I feel that starting a business is not for everybody, and it's like, and I think you can only find out if you go and do it, right? Like I said to myself I've always wanted to be the pilot rather than the passenger, and I kind of know that's just a certain mindset and a person that you need to be. Not everyone wants to be the pilot. People are happy enough just sitting looking outside and getting to a destination, and that's totally fine. But I've always been like, I want to be the pilot to fly the people to the destination. So You know, again, that's just a different mentality, you know, and it's not for everybody.
Yeah.
So if I was to go back and tell myself what I would do differently, I think I could probably, I mean, there's mistakes that I've done, but again, those mistakes I would need to have went through to have learned from them.
Yeah.
So, sorry, Kevin, it's a hard question.
You're right. It's an impossible question, really, in terms of what would you do differently? But
it's a hindsight thing, right?
Yeah. Good. And who do you look up to? Who inspires you most, maybe in the business world or maybe outside? But who do you look up to?
I would say a lot of my motivation comes from my dad. So we were very close. In 2015, so he passed away with cancer, with bowel cancer. So a lot of like what I do and why I started making a watch was influenced a lot by him.
Yeah,
I know that I probably wouldn't be a designer or engineer maybe if it wasn't for him, from the things that, like the toys that he gave me when I was younger, you know, Meccano and stuff, where I was just kind of getting hands-on and making stuff. Yeah. Like a lot of that's inspired by him. So I think he inspires me to want to keep doing what I'm doing. And others, I don't know. I kind of just do my own thing, really.
Yeah. All right. No, brilliant. What sort of apps or maybe bits of technology do you rely on? Do you find really useful?
I mean, I do a lot of hiking.
Right. Okay. Yeah.
So in terms of like hiking apps, Old Trails is probably what I use a lot if I want to look for a good hike.
What's that one called?
It's called Old Trails.
Okay. Right.
So they're quite good if I want to look up for hiking stuff. Funny enough, I've actually recently, since last June, I've started my own personal brand as well.
Okay.
It's so I do a lot of hiking and walking in Scotland, and I record that. And share that, and it's since June I've got 38,000 followers, or nearly 38,000 followers on Instagram.
Wow. And
TikTok's going well as well. I kind of post the same thing, but yeah, just kind of I do that, when I can, and it's a way also, I link that to my business as well, but that's more of a personal thing of something I enjoy doing, and I feel being outdoors is good for everybody,
Yeah. No. Very nice. And I mean, we've talked about your collaborations. Would you say that's your most successful marketing kind of tactic, lead generation tactic, those collaborations? Yeah,
100%. I think, again, I think it was so important to add credential to a small business that no one's ever heard of, and now being in shops and stuff, or in their gift shops, it's just, people see it.
And how do people find you on the web?
On the website, so it's usually Google search. If you're looking for kind of unique Scottish products, you could probably find me that way. When people are searching up Scottish watches and stuff like that, find me that way. A lot through Instagram, through social media and stuff is usually the way. When I collaborate with a distillery, they'll post something, and then I can get funneling people into the website, really.
Very good. Excellent. Well, it has been absolutely fascinating, Michael, and I wish you all the best as you scale up. And if people would like to get hold of you or find out more about Fiodh, what's the best way for them to do that? So
you can either search up Fiodh, so FIODH.Scotland on Instagram, or you could type in FIODH.Scot to go on the website, and you can check everything out there, and contact me anytime.
Brilliant. Well, Michael, thank you very much indeed for being my guest on ScaleUp Radio today.
No problem. Thank you, Kevin. I appreciate it.
I hope you enjoyed that discussion, and if you're building and scaling your own business, you might well be interested in our book, The Entrepreneurial ScaleUp System. And it's exactly what it says on the tin. It's a practical handbook around scaling a business in a structured way. And you can order a copy on all your favorite online retailers, including an audio version, or you can find it and other supporting resources on our website, www.esusgroup.co.uk. That's esusgroup.co.uk, which is esusgroup.co.uk.
been a Monkey Pants Productions podcast.